Hello friends, everyone needs to eat, so me and REKT here are going to walk you through how to always fill your belly in Alpha 20 and the changes that we've seen from previous versions. While there are always things that are familiar to players from previous alphas, Alpha 20 has actually had some significant updates to the farming progression, and not all of it is good either. The changes have been highly controversial and generated a lot of discussion, and the fun pimps have to some degree made modifications, although in my view quite minor. But if you're looking to farm in 7 days to die, this is the guide for you. Make sure you harvest that like button and tap the notification bell too, so you will get notified of new videos. You are of course also welcome to subscribe to the channel, all free. But before we get started, I have one big complaint. Why can REKT look so much better than me? I mean, we got similar boots, his are higher quality, you see there are more details. Look at my overalls here, his is better, much better. Even my shirt looks, it looks cool, but his is, rolled up sleeves, looks a little bit more workmanship-like. His face, look at my smooth skin like a baby's butt. He's got a little bit of wrinkles, a little bit of extra tone. Even his cap is better than mine. Oh, fun pimps, this will not stand. How can the player look so much worse than even the NPCs? This is just not fair. But let us start with the basics. There are two types of farming. The first one being basically farming wild plants. And you can find, like here, you can find corn. There are places which has potatoes, there'll be flowers, mushrooms, and more around the world as you explore. All you have to do is walk up to them, and not the dead one. The dead one doesn't give you anything. Well, it gives you the plant fiber, which is not what you want to eat. You walk up to it and you punch. Oh, look there, some experience, and I got one corn. Not bad, right? That's your reward. You will get between 1 to 3 of that crop type, and how many really depends on your skill in living off the land, and we are going to come back to that in a moment. The second type of farming is where you craft or loot or buy the seeds. You craft these farm plots, you plant the seed, you wait, and when grown, you go up and punch them as well to harvest. Look there, I got 2 and 1 seed. Now the second type of farming is more traditional, but the first type of farming is actually where a lot of players spend more of their time due to some of the significant changes made in Alpha 20. Unlike some of the earlier alphas, we can now only plant in the dedicated farm plots. So you can do that pretty easily. So how you do that is you go to your inventory. You can of course do this in the workbench as well. And you need some wood, rotting flesh, nitrate powder, and clay soil. Now, there's basically 410, 2500. This does get modified based on your living off the land skill. It'll go down by 30% and then go down by 50%. We'll go in that a little bit too. You craft this one, which is going to take about 20 seconds to craft, so not too bad. We're going to dig up a little bit of piece of land here, which of course you don't have to. You can place this on the ground as well, like that. Now we have it, and we right click. You'll see it gives a white outline, which means that you can plant it. If it's red, it basically means you cannot plant it. Right click, that's it. Now we have a corn seed that is growing. And now we have to do a lot of really boring things in order to have this grow up, which basically means we have to wait. There's no real maintenance now. You don't have to water it. There's no water within 4 blocks like you have in Minecraft, for instance. You don't need to fertilize and everything. You just have to wait. And growth time is roughly 2 hours, meaning 2 in-game days. But once it's done, you basically harvest it by punching it. And my daughter always is wondering why I keep punching these plants. Because you end up with items and you have a 50% chance to end up with a seed as well. And you look down at the bottom, you'll see I'm getting plants, or the crops, I'm getting the corn. And sometimes I'm also getting the seed, but not always. This is actually one of the changes. You have a 50% base chance to also get a seed. So you could end up with the seed plus the harvest some of the time, and other times you only end up with a harvested item. And that is the big difference from Alpha 19, where you would always get the harvest, you would get the corn or the potato, but the seed remained planted. It would just reset to this growing stage and it will restart the growth phase, and you just have to wait. This no longer happens. So how much do you actually receive from punching them? And this is where the skills come in handy. Let's have a look at living off the land. And this is under fortitude. which of course is the skill which is sort of physical resilience. So it sort of makes sense to farmers to have this done. And you do need to skill a little bit into your base fortitude. The first one is 1, and then you need fortitude number 3, and then you need number 5. So it's not really that bad. The first one only requires fortitude 1, which means you can buy it really early on, and I would suggest actually doing that. If you remember, when I harvested this and I don't have any skill, I received 1. When I harvest here, I receive 2. And that's because the difference between a wild harvest and a farmed harvest is basically double. So no skill means you get 1 and 2. If you then skill yourself up into 1, which is what I would suggest doing early on, is that you double the harvest of wild or planted crops. So you would get 2 for wild and 4 in farm plots. While you can also craft seeds for these flowers, you can see goldenrod, chrysanthemum, aloe, and yucca, which is helpful. And at this level, farm plots also are 30% cheaper to craft. So if you want to make a bunch of them, this is the skill that you want to have. I would always urge you to, early into the game, where you can spare 1 point, do that, because it will help you as you are finding all these crops around you in the POIs or in the wild. Now, if you go to living off the land number 2, you can start crafting seeds for the berries and vegetables, which is sort of useful, and you have 50% chance to harvest an additional crop. This is not super helpful though, because getting 4 or maybe getting 5, it's not a big difference. Now, it is good to have farm plots cost 50% less, but in general, you probably want to stay on living off the land 1, and then when you can, leapfrog all the way up to living off the land 3, because here you are tripling the harvest of wild or planted crops, which means that you get either 3 for wild harvests, or you get 6, a massive 6 for just harvesting here in the farm. Let's do that. Let's go all the way up here, and we're going to bash this. Let me see. I got 7 because notice you get the tripling of the harvest, but you still have that extra 50% chance that you got from the second one to get 1 additional crop. So you get 6 or 7, and that's really good. And if you do that in the wild, you get 3 or 4. Here I got 4. I got 4. Here I got 3. So it's really helpful even for wild harvesting. You'll end up with a lot more. And of course, if you are harvesting in your farm, look at that. You're getting a bunch of crops and a lot of corn in this case. And this is why living off the land is really useful once you can spare the points. But at least you're going to get 6 as you're harvesting. And this is significant because 6 is more than 5. I mean, that's maths, right? It makes sense. And it seems silly, but it really does matter. But coming back to crafting seed, each seed takes 5 crops to actually craft. So if I want to make my corn seed, I go to recipe and do corn seed, and it says it's going to take you 5. And you can unlock the recipes either from living off the land, as we went through. It actually allows you to do the flowers and everything. Here it allows you the berries and vegetables, or you can just find or loot or buy the recipes out in the world. You might be able to find them at the traders, or just by looting as you go around clearing POIs and look through trash. But 5 is the magic number because that's what it costs to make a seed. And this is why it's a huge deal for how much you harvest, due to you only have a 50% chance to get the crop and the seed. And if you don't get the seed, of course, you need crops to turn into seeds in order to replant. It means that if you are unskilled, let's take 2 farm plots, you have no skill, you harvest both, which gives you 2 plus 2, which is 4 crops. You get 1 seed on average because you get 50% chance, and another 50% chance, so you should end up with probably 1 seed. 1 seed, 4 crops. But because it costs 5 crops to make another seed, it basically means that while you have 1 seed to replant, you only have 4 crops, and you are down 1 farm plot of harvest next time. And that means that you've lost basically 1 plant. You do have a little bit you make food from, but it's not worth turning it into seeds. And that means that if you are unskilled, never craft seeds. Even if you can, just plant whatever you find or loot to buy, because you're going to end up losing if you keep crafting seeds. Now, if you do get living off the land 1, things do get a little bit better, because you are doubling the harvest. With 2 farm plots, you'll get 1 seed and 8 crops. 8 crops means that you can take 5 to craft a seed, and you have a balance left of 3 that you can use to cook. So you are growing your food supply slowly. I'd probably still recommend that at Living Off the Land 1, just harvest and cook with all of it. Loot seeds, buy them, because at this level you probably want to spend more time cooking the food rather than just farming. Now at Living Off the Land 2, because you end up with slightly more crops, you might get that extra 1, and farm plots are 50% off. It is easier to make a larger farm. Still, I generally don't recommend going to Forager Living Off the Land 2, because 1 is sufficient for wild harvesting. If you really want to have a farm, you want to go all the way to 3. But at 3, this is where you get so much more. If you have 2 farm plots that you are farming from, you will end up with 1 seed, but you'll end up with 12, or you could have 14 of crops. And even if you turn 5 of them into another seed to replant, it still means you have a balance of 7 or 9 that you can cook with. And this is where the food really starts rolling in. As you make a bigger farm, and of course it's cheaper, you still have that 50% less cost to craft the farm plots. It means that you can plenty get all the crops that you need to cook with. And because a lot of these crops, well, not really crops, but if you look at the cotton plant, you can look at the chrysanthemum and the goldenrod flower. They are really abundant out and about. So if you just go find these plots outside of the wilderness, if you have Living Off the Land, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, especially 3, just go around and farm a little bit, and you'll get a lot of them without actually having to bother to farm them or make them in your own farming area. And that's what I would suggest for when it comes to cotton, when it comes to the teas, or the chrysanthemum and the goldenrod. Just go and find them in the nature all around you in the wilderness and go farm them that way. Don't worry about spending a lot of time to put them in your own farm plots. Save that for your corn, your potatoes, and so on. And that brings us to the controversy surrounding the farming changes for Alpha 20. As highlighted, whereas Alpha 19 had the harvest action keep the seed planted 100% of the time, in Alpha 20, the seed never stays planted, meaning you also have to take the time to replant. Even worse, you only have a 50% chance to get a seed, meaning that as you farm, you're also spending a lot of time recrafting seeds so you can replant. Many find this very tedious. It's not difficult, it's just extra steps that are tedious, and I agree. The change seems to have been made originally to reduce the amount of food players have, to make it more of a survival situation where you're struggling for the food, you're always hungry, and it does to some degree mean that you get less food for a lot more tedious work, especially at low levels of Living Off the Land. However, as you progress in Living Off the Land, food becomes super plentiful again. It's just tedious to farm. And that brings up the second really peculiar design choice. While farming has been artificially nerfed, there is so much food in the world. And this circles back to, as mentioned, many just farm wild crops. As every city has, as we have behind myself here, a lot of farms nearby, and they're filled with corn, potatoes, and other plants. That, together with looting the canned food or even cooked food, or just buying it cheaply at the traders and their vending machines, means that farming has become a much less central part of the game. You can get very far by simply wild crop farming, buying at the traders, and just, killing animals and making grilled meat. As an example, on my Community 7 Days to Die server, I never bothered with any real farming until I was way past level 50. I would get Living Off the Land 1 and just farm the wild crops everywhere. When I go to PI that I'm clearing, especially Farm 1, I would clear it, I would start my quest, and then I would clear it again. I end up with so much crops. And that has kept me well fed without any issues. While I did later on move on to Living Off the Land 3 and farming for some higher quality foods, that's been more for luxury and due to having free points that I could spend on farming, not because I necessarily wanted. I would definitely push skilling up in Living Off the Land until later, until you're somewhat established, because food really shouldn't be a big issue in Alpha 20. Maybe just in the first few days. After that, it really shouldn't be. So most seem to do basic farming, especially the wild crops, and hold off on the serious farming until later. And you probably will enjoy the game more by not spending with all this grinding on the farming. Most players like to have a small farm in their base anyway, but seem to find that the same situation occurs. You got a nice farm, but you hardly ever harvest it because you always have enough food anyway. But hey, it still looks good, right? Well, give me your thoughts on Alpha 20 farming in the comment section below right after you hit the like button. If you would like to support my content, I invite you to join me at patreon.com/Vedui42 and become a supporter there, or right here on YouTube by clicking the join as a YouTube member right below the videos. I thank everyone who have done that and helped to support the content and enable me to put it out week after week for your viewing pleasures. If there are any other guides and tutorials you're looking for me to make, why not give me a suggestion in the comment as well? I'm always happy to cover other parts of the game that people are interested in, and who knows, maybe I already have. Have a great day, Survivor.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the Vedui community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.